I thought my marriage to Claire was rock solid. We had been together for 13 years, had 2 amazing kids, and built a life that people envied. From the outside, everything seemed perfect. But in hindsight, maybe that's where I should have known something was wrong. When things appeared too perfect to question, it all started on a Saturday morning. Claire had gone to a work conference for the weekend. She had done this before, but this time something felt off. She left the house dressed more elegantly than usual for a conference, her perfume lingering in the air even after she'd left. I brushed it off, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Later that day, while cleaning the house, I found her old camera tucked away in the back of the closet. We hadn't used it in years, ever since smartphones took over. Nostalgia kicked in, and I decided to browse through the memory card. Maybe there were some forgotten family moments, I thought. What I found instead was the photograph. It was a candid shot of Claire laughing at a candlelit dinner, her hand resting intimately on the arm of a man I didn't recognize. The man's face wasn't visible, but her expression told the whole story. That wasn't the laugh she reserved for strangers or colleagues. It was the kind of laugh I used to see when we were falling in love. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled as I clicked through the rest of the photos. There weren't many, but each one painted a picture I couldn't ignore. Her leaning into him, their glasses clinking in a toast, a close-up of their hands intertwined on the table. And then, the last photo. The man had snapped it, catching her looking directly at him with a look of adoration I hadn't seen directed at me in years. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, staring at that screen. My chest felt heavy, my mind racing through memories, trying to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the woman in these pictures. When had this started? Who was this man? What had I done, or not done, to let this happen? The questions hit me like waves, each one pulling me under a little more. But one thing was clear. My life had changed forever in that moment, and there was no going back. That photograph haunted me the rest of the day, but anger kept me moving. My mind spun with possibilities. What to do next? How to confront her? How to protect myself and the kids from whatever fallout was coming? I knew I needed more than just a single photograph. If I went to her with accusations and nothing to back them up, she'd deny it, twist the story, or worse, turn it around on me. Claire had always been clever, one step ahead in any argument. She was the kind of woman who could charm her way out of a speeding ticket while leaving the officer thinking they owed her an apology. I wasn't going to walk into this unarmed. I decided to dig deeper. Her laptop sat on the kitchen counter, humming softly in sleep mode. She rarely used it since her work provided a tablet, but it struck me as the perfect place to start. Logging in was easy. Her password hadn't changed in years, a combination of our wedding date and her lucky number. I went straight to her email. Most of it was work-related, but tucked away in a folder labeled Miscellaneous were messages that made my blood boil. Emails to someone named Elliot. Sweet, flirty exchanges, sprinkled with inside jokes I didn't understand. One subject line read, "Last night was incredible." My hands shook as I clicked it open. Elliot, you're amazing. I can't stop thinking about the way you laughed when I spilled wine on the waiter. I haven't felt this alive in years. When can I see you again? Claire. It's the same for me. I feel like I've been sleepwalking, and now I'm awake. I wish we didn't have to sneak around, but it's worth it. You're worth it. I slammed the laptop shut, seething. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Who the hell was Elliot? Was he the man in the photograph? And most importantly, how had I been so blind? I didn't have time to dwell. I had to act. If she was willing to throw everything we'd built away, she wasn't going to do it on her terms. She was walking into a war she didn't even know was coming. I grabbed the camera, removed the memory card, and slipped it into my pocket. I forwarded every incriminating email to my account and made sure to wipe the evidence from her sent folder. As I closed the laptop, a thought struck me. If she was bold enough to keep these emails on her main device, there might be more on her phone. Her phone. The device that never left her side. The one she guarded like a treasure chest. I'd never given it a second thought, chalking it up to modern-day privacy. But now, it felt like the final piece of the puzzle. She was scheduled to return home Sunday evening. That gave me one more day to plan my next move. But the anger simmering inside me wouldn't let me wait passively. I needed answers, and I needed them now. Acting on impulse, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years, my friend Jake. Jake was a private investigator, the kind of guy who could find a needle in a haystack, or, in this case, a cheater in a marriage. When he picked up, his tone was casual, like we'd spoken yesterday. "Russell, my man. Long time. What's up?" "I need your help," I said without preamble. "I think Claire is cheating on me." There was a pause, then the sound of his chair creaking. "I'm listening." I filled him in on the photo, the emails, and my suspicions. Jake's tone grew serious as I talked, his questions sharp and to the point. Did I have access to her schedule? Had she been acting differently? Was she still affectionate or distant? "I can tail her when she gets back," he said finally. "But you're gonna want to hit her where it hurts. People like Claire, they only admit the truth when you've got them cornered. You need proof so solid she can't squirm out of it." "What kind of proof?" I asked, my voice tight. "Location tracking, phone logs, maybe even surveillance," he replied. "It won't be pretty, Russ, but if you want to win this, you have to be ready to go all in." All in. The phrase stuck with me long after I hung up. I wasn't sure I was ready for the depths this would take me to, but I knew one thing. Claire's world was about to collapse, and I was going to be the one holding the detonator. The hours dragged by after my call with Jake. I paced the house, my thoughts a chaotic whirlwind of betrayal and determination. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me. Not after everything we'd built, everything I'd sacrificed for this marriage. If Claire thought she could deceive me and get away with it, she was sorely mistaken. Jake texted me a few hours later. "Meet me at my office tomorrow morning. Bring whatever you've got." The next morning, I grabbed the memory card and the emails I'd printed and drove downtown to Jake's office. His building was in a quiet corner of the city, far from prying eyes. Jake met me at the door, his expression grim. He was a big guy, the kind who didn't need to intimidate because his presence did it for him. "Let's see what we're working with," he said, ushering me inside. I handed over the memory card and the emails. He plugged the card into his computer and leaned back as the images appeared on the screen. The photograph of Claire and Elliot at the candlelit dinner made him whistle softly. "That's not a colleague's dinner," Jake said, shaking his head. "This guy's comfortable with her, too comfortable." He flipped through the rest of the photos, his jaw tightening with each one. Then he turned to the emails, reading them in silence. When he finished, he tapped the edge of the desk thoughtfully. "Here's the deal," he said. "We need to confirm who this guy is and how deep this thing goes. I can pull his details from her phone records, but that'll take time. In the meantime, I'd recommend tracking her movements. You mentioned she has a work phone, right?" "Yeah," I replied. "She uses it for everything." Jake nodded. "We'll clone it. It's simple. I'll give you a device that can extract all her texts, call logs, and even her GPS history. You just need 5 minutes with her phone." "That's easier said than done," I muttered. Claire's phone was practically glued to her hand. "You'll figure it out," Jake said with a shrug. "You always were resourceful. Besides, you'll need more than just emails and photos. You want to corner her, remember? This will do it." He handed me a sleek black device, no bigger than a USB stick. "Plug this into her phone's charging port. It'll do the rest." As I left Jake's office, a plan began to take shape in my mind. Claire was supposed to get back that evening. She'd probably waltz in, acting like nothing was wrong, but I'd be ready. I wasn't going to confront her yet. I needed to see how far she'd take the charade. When Claire finally came through the door around 7:30 p.m., she had her usual confident air, her suitcase rolling behind her. She kissed me on the cheek and smiled as if nothing had changed. "Hey, hon," she said brightly. "Miss me?" I forced a smile. "Always." She breezed past me into the kitchen, setting her bag down on the counter. "How was your weekend?" "Uneventful," I said, watching her closely. She seemed relaxed, her guard completely down. Over dinner, I pretended to be the clueless husband. I asked her about the conference, and she rattled off the usual jargon about keynote speakers and networking sessions. I nodded along, feeling like I was listening to a well-rehearsed script. Then, I saw my opportunity. Claire's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, but didn't pick it up. "Work emails," she said dismissively. Feigning nonchalance, I asked, "Mind if I use your charger? My phone's dead." "Sure. It's in my bag," she replied, distracted. The charger wasn't in her bag. It was in the living room, plugged into the wall. I grabbed her phone along with it, my heart pounding as I plugged in Jake's device. The small screen on the gadget lit up, flashing a progress bar as it copied everything. I kept one ear trained on Claire as I fumbled with the device. She was still in the kitchen, tidying up and humming softly. When the device finished, I unplugged it and slid her phone back into her bag, making sure everything was exactly as I'd found it. When I returned to the living room, Claire was already sitting on the couch, scrolling through Netflix. She looked up and smiled. "What do you want to watch?" I shrugged, sitting down beside her. "You pick." As the screen flickered to life, I stared at it without seeing. My mind was elsewhere, already anticipating what Jake would find on that device. Later that night, after Claire had fallen asleep, I sent Jake a message. "Got the data. Sending it over now." He replied instantly, "Good. I'll call you first thing tomorrow." I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling. Whatever Jake uncovered would either confirm my worst fears or shatter them entirely. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to be the clueless husband anymore. The trap was set, and Claire had no idea. The next morning, Jake called me at 7 a.m. sharp. I had barely slept, and the ringtone felt like a hammer against my skull. I grabbed the phone, my voice groggy but eager. "What did you find?" I asked, skipping pleasantries. "You sitting down?" Jake's tone was grim, which made my stomach twist. "I'm in bed. Just tell me." Jake took a deep breath. "It's worse than we thought, Russ." I went through the texts and GPS logs from her phone. She's been meeting this guy, Elliot, for months. Hotel rooms, late-night drives to secluded places, the whole 9 yards. Months. The word hit me like a sledgehammer. I clenched my fist, my jaw tightening. "Keep going." "She calls him Ellie in her texts," Jake continued. "They talk about everything, when they can meet, how they miss each other, even plans for a future together." "A future?" My voice cracked, anger bubbling to the surface. "Yeah," Jake said hesitantly. "She's been telling him that she's waiting for the right time to leave you. And get this, she's been asking about his job and his finances, trying to figure out if he can take care of her." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. After everything I'd done for her, she was lining up a replacement, calculating whether this guy could provide for her as I had. "She mentioned me?" I asked through gritted teeth. "Not often," Jake admitted. "When she does, it's dismissive. She's been painting herself as the victim, saying you've been distant, focused on work, and not giving her what she needs." "That's crap," I spat. "She's the one who's been distant, always on her damn phone, or at these so-called work events." Jake sighed. "Look, Russ, I've seen a lot of cases like this. People rewrite history to justify their actions. It doesn't mean it's true. It just means they've convinced themselves it is." I sat there in silence, the weight of his words pressing down on me. Finally, Jake broke the tension. "I also found something else. The GPS logs show she's been going to his house, a nice place on the other side of town. You want me to get more details on him?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. "I want to know everything about this guy, where he works, who he is, everything." "Consider it done," Jake said. "But Russ, you need to start thinking about your next move. This isn't just about catching her in the act. It's about protecting yourself." "Don't worry," I said, my voice hard. "I've already started." After hanging up, I got to work. I wasn't going to let Claire destroy me, financially or emotionally. I dug out our prenuptial agreement from the safe and reviewed it carefully. It was ironclad. If she left me for infidelity, she'd walk away with almost nothing. The house, the savings, even the retirement accounts were protected. But I needed more than just a legal safety net. I needed to send a message. That afternoon, I called a locksmith and had all the locks in the house changed. I also set up security cameras, inside and out. If Claire tried to pull any stunts, I'd know. By the time she got home from work, the house was practically a fortress. She walked through the door with her usual smile, oblivious to the changes. "Hey, hon. How was your day?" "Fine," I said curtly, barely looking up from the laptop. She frowned but didn't press. That night, As she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my mind churning with plans. The emails, the texts, the photograph, they were all pieces of a puzzle that I was finally putting together. Claire thought she was in control, that she could manipulate me while keeping her affair hidden. But she didn't realize she was playing a game I was about to win. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to dismantle her entire illusion of power, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. And when the time came, I'd make sure Elliot was caught in the fallout too. The following day, I called Jake to check on his progress. I needed to know everything about Elliot before making my next move. Jake didn't disappoint. I ran a full background check on your guy, Jake said. His name is Elliot Harper. He's a mid-level manager at some boutique marketing firm downtown. Divorced, no kids, and no criminal record. He lives in a nice house, too nice for someone in his pay grade, which means he's either got savings or he's up to something shady. Anything on his finances? I asked. Not yet, Jake admitted, but I'll dig deeper. The guy's been cautious. He's using burner apps to text her and paying cash for their little rendezvous. But I did find one interesting detail. His ex-wife left him for the exact same reason. Cheating. I let out a bitter laugh. So, he's been through this before. Perfect. Jake sighed. Russ, I know you want to blow this wide open, but don't do anything rash. Let me handle the digging while you focus on staying calm. Calm? I echoed. You think I can stay calm knowing my wife is sleeping with a guy who specializes in breaking up families? You have to, Jake said firmly. Trust me, we'll nail them both. Just play it smart. When I hung up, I stared at my phone for a long time. My rage was a storm barely held in check, but Jake was right. Acting impulsively would only give Claire and Elliot an advantage. I needed to bide my time. That evening, I decided to test the waters. Claire had been unusually chipper all day, humming to herself as she cooked dinner. I couldn't help but wonder if she'd seen Elliot recently, or if she was planning to see him soon. Over dinner, I said casually, you've been in a good mood lately. Work going well? She smiled brightly. Yeah, things have been great. I landed a big account last week, so I guess I'm still riding that high. Good for you, I said, forcing a smile. We should celebrate. Her eyes darted to her phone for a split second before she looked back at me. Maybe this weekend. I've got some late meetings coming up, so things might get busy. There it was. The lie. I'd seen the flicker of hesitation, the small shift in her tone. She was planning something. Later that night, as she showered, I grabbed her phone from the nightstand. I knew her passcode. It was our wedding anniversary. For a moment, I stared at the screen, debating whether I really wanted to do this. But the need for answers outweighed any lingering doubts. I went straight to her messages. Sure enough, there were texts from Elliot, hidden under a fake contact name. Monica, work. Elliot, can't wait to see you tomorrow. Usual spot? Claire, yes. I'll leave around 6. Should be there by 6:30. Tomorrow. They were meeting tomorrow. I quickly forwarded the messages to my email and returned her phone to its place. By the time she stepped out of the bathroom, toweling her hair dry, I was already in bed, pretending to scroll through my own phone. The next day, I called Jake again. They're meeting tonight, I said, my voice tight. Where? He asked. Their usual spot, I replied. Somewhere around 6:30. Can you track her? Consider it done, Jake said. I'll tell them and send you updates. But Russ, are you sure you want to confront them this way? I'm sure, I said coldly. It's time to put an end to this. By 6 p.m., I was parked a block away from the restaurant Jake had pinpointed. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Part of me wanted to storm in and confront them on the spot, but I forced myself to stay calm. Jake texted me at 6:45. They're here. Corner booth, back of the restaurant. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with how this would go down. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy the fantasy they'd built around each other. No more sneaking around, no more excuses. This was their reckoning. I sat in the car for a moment longer, letting the anger simmer into something sharper, something controlled. My phone buzzed again with another update from Jake. They're laughing. Intimate vibes. Get ready. With one final breath, I stepped out of the car and walked toward the restaurant. The glow of the streetlights and the faint hum of the city felt distant, drowned out by the pounding of my heartbeat in my ears. I pushed the door open, the cool air conditioning washing over me as I stepped inside. The hostess greeted me with a smile. "Table for one?" "No," I said curtly. "I'm meeting someone." I scanned the room, my eyes locking on the corner booth. There they were. Claire sat across from Elliot, leaning forward, her hand grazing his on the table. Her laughter rang out, light and familiar, a sound I hadn't heard in months. Elliot was smirking, his posture relaxed as if he owned the world. They hadn't seen me yet. I made my way toward their table, each step deliberate, my chest tightening with every stride. When I reached them, I stood there silently for a moment, savoring the way their carefree expressions froze as they realized I was there. "Russell?" Claire's voice wavered, her smile evaporating. Her eyes darted to Elliot, who shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Don't stop on my account," I said, my voice steady but laced with venom. "You two looked like you were having such a lovely time." "Russell, this isn't what it looks like," Claire stammered, her cheeks flushing. She tried to stand, but I raised a hand to stop her. "Sit," I commanded, my voice low but firm. She obeyed, her gaze dropping to the table. Elliot cleared his throat, attempting to regain some composure. "Look, man, I don't think—" I cut him off with a glare. "Don't speak." He shut his mouth, his confidence visibly draining. I turned my attention back to Claire. "Months," I said, my tone cold. "Months of lying, sneaking around, and making me feel like a fool. For what? This?" Claire opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my phone, the screen displaying one of their incriminating texts. Her face paled as she realized what it was. "I know everything," I said, my voice rising just enough to make heads turn from nearby tables. "The emails, the texts, the hotel meetings. Usual spot? Really? You couldn't even come up with something original?" "Russell, please," she whispered, glancing nervously at the growing audience. "Can we talk about this in private?" "No," I snapped. "You lost the right to privacy the moment you started sleeping with this clown." Elliot bristled. "Hey, watch it." "I told you not to speak," I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. "You're lucky I haven't put you through that wall yet." He shrank back in his seat, his bravado crumbling. I turned back to Claire, my voice dropping to a near whisper. Was it worth it? Throwing away 13 years of marriage, a family, a life we built together. For this? Tears welled in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. "I don't know," she said weakly. "I wasn't thinking. I was lost." "Lost?" I repeated bitterly. "No, Claire. Lost is what I felt when I found that photograph. Lost is what I've been for weeks, trying to figure out how the woman I married turned into a stranger. You weren't lost. You were selfish." She broke into quiet sobs, her shoulders trembling. Elliot reached out as if to comfort her, but I shot him a look that made him freeze. "I hope she's worth it," I said to him, my tone dripping with disdain. "Because she's all yours now." With that, I pulled off my wedding ring and placed it on the table between them. Claire gasped, reaching for it, but I stepped back before she could touch me. "We're done," I said flatly. "I'll have the divorce papers sent to you. Don't bother coming home. Your things will be on the curb by morning." I turned and walked out, my chest heaving with a mix of anger, sadness, and strange relief. As the cool night air hit my face, I realized I felt lighter. The confrontation was over, but the battle wasn't. Now, it was time to make sure she couldn't take anything else from me. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed again. A text from Jake. "Well done. Ready to take the next steps?" I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed back, "Yes. Let's finish this." The drive home felt surreal. The anger that had kept me upright in that restaurant was slowly giving way to something colder, resolve. This wasn't just about ending my marriage. It was about making sure Claire understood the consequences of what she'd done. She had gambled with everything, and now she was going to lose it all. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw the house in a new light. It was no longer the sanctuary we'd built together. It was mine, and I was going to make sure it stayed that way. I didn't waste any time. I went straight to the garage and began pulling out suitcases and boxes, determined to pack Claire's things before morning. Her side of the closet was first. Rows of designer dresses, expensive shoes, and jewelry I'd bought her over the years. I tossed them into suitcases without care, her perfume lingering on the clothes as I zipped them shut. Then I moved to the bathroom, sweeping her skincare products and makeup into a box. Every item felt like a reminder of her betrayal. As I worked, my phone buzzed. A text from Jake. Got more on Elliot. Call me when you're ready. I dialed immediately. What did you find? I asked. Plenty, Jake replied. Elliot's finances aren't as clean as they look. Turns out, he's got some serious debt. Credit cards maxed out, late payments on his mortgage. The guy's barely keeping his head above water. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. So, she's planning to leave me for a guy who's drowning in debt. Perfect. It gets better, Jake said. I also found out he's been seeing another woman. Claire isn't the only one he's stringing along. That stopped me in my tracks. You're kidding. Nope. Her name's Melissa. She works in the same office as him. They've been spotted together at least twice this month, according to some coworkers I reached out to. My mind raced. This was exactly the kind of leverage I needed. Jake, I want you to get proof. Texts, photos, anything. I need something that will blow this whole thing wide open. Already on it, Jake said. But what's the plan, Russ? You've got the upper hand here. How far do you want to take this? Far enough to make sure Claire regrets every second of this affair, I said firmly. And Elliot? He doesn't get to walk away unscathed either. After hanging up, I returned to packing with renewed focus. By the time I was done, Claire's belongings were stacked neatly by the front door. I left a note on top of the suitcases. Pick these up by noon. After that, they're going to Goodwill. Satisfied, I headed to my office to tackle the next part of my plan. Claire had no idea how much of our life was tied to my name. The house, the savings, even the car she drove. It was all under my control. I logged into our accounts, ensuring that every penny was locked down. The prenup was clear. If she left me for infidelity, she forfeited any claim to my assets. But I wasn't taking chances. I called my lawyer first thing in the morning to start the paperwork. Russell, my lawyer, Tom, said after I explained the situation, "This is a strong case. With the evidence you have, there's no way she can contest the prenup. But if you want to pursue damages or custody arrangements for the kids, we'll need more details." Damages? I asked, intrigued. If we can prove her infidelity caused financial or emotional harm, we can seek compensation, Tom explained. It's not common, but it's possible, especially if you have proof of her using marital funds for the affair. That got my attention. I'll get you everything you need, I promised. After the call, I sat back and stared at the ceiling. The pieces were falling into place, but there was one final thing I needed to do. Make sure Claire saw the full scope of her mistakes. By the time noon rolled around, Claire showed up with a friend to collect her things. I stayed inside, watching from the window as they loaded the suitcases into her car. She didn't knock, didn't try to come inside. She knew better. As she drove away, I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. This wasn't how I had envisioned our story ending, but it was the ending she had chosen. Now, it was time to deal with Elliot. After Claire left, I called Jake. "Do you have what I need on Elliot?" "I've got plenty," Jake said. Photos of him with Melissa, credit card receipts for hotel stays, even some questionable transactions tied to his company's expense account. The guy's a walking scandal. I couldn't hide my grin. Perfect. Let's make sure Claire knows exactly who she's chosen over me. Jake hesitated. You sure about this? If you go public with this, it's going to get messy. People will talk, and Claire might try to twist it. Let her try, I said coldly. This isn't about winning anyone's approval. It's about making her see the truth. That evening, I sent Claire an email with attachments, photos of Elliot with Melissa, screenshots of his debt records, and a detailed report from Jake. My message was short and to the point. This is the man you're leaving me for. Choose wisely. Her response came an hour later. Russell, please, can we talk? It's not what you think. I ignored it. The next day, I received a call from Elliot's wife, Melissa. "Mr. Green, my name is Melissa Harper. I believe we have a common problem." Her voice was sharp and confident, a woman who had clearly been pushed too far. We agreed to meet at a cafe downtown. When she arrived, she wasted no time. "I know about your wife and Elliot. I also know about his other affairs. He's a serial cheater." I handed her the file Jake had compiled. "Here's everything I've got. Use it however you want." Melissa's eyes scanned the documents, her expression hardening with every page. "He thinks he can humiliate me and get away with it. Not this time." Before she left, she turned to me. "Let's make sure they both pay for what they've done." A week later, Claire showed up at the house, her face pale and drawn. "Russell, please," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I made a mistake. I didn't realize what I was risking until now." I crossed my arms, unmoved. "Mistake? You had months to reconsider, Claire. You didn't care then." "I do now," she pleaded. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Please, don't throw us away." Her words might have moved me once, but now they felt hollow. "You already threw us away, Claire. You made your choice. Now you have to live with it." Jake's connections came through in spades. Within days, Elliot's financial mismanagement and infidelity had reached his workplace. His employer launched an investigation, and Melissa filed for divorce, citing adultery. Elliot lost his job, his reputation, and his home in a matter of weeks. Claire, meanwhile, found herself isolated. Her friends distanced themselves, and word of her affair spread through her social circles. With the evidence I had gathered, the divorce was swift and brutal. Claire tried to negotiate for more, but the prenup held firm. She left with only her personal belongings and a fraction of what she'd hoped for. The house, the savings, and custody of our kids remained with me. For the first time in years, I felt free. I poured my energy into my work, my kids, and myself. I started therapy, something I had once scoffed at, and found it surprisingly helpful. The wounds Claire left were deep, but I was determined to heal. Months later, I ran into Claire at a mutual friend's event. She looked tired, a shadow of the confident woman she used to be. She approached me hesitantly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For everything." I nodded. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Claire." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Her apology didn't fix what she had done, but it gave me the closure I needed. Life didn't return to what it was before Claire's betrayal. It became something better. I rediscovered hobbies I'd abandoned, reconnected with old friends, and found joy in the little things. My kids and I grew closer, building a bond that no betrayal could break. One day, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Claire's actions had shattered my trust, but they also forced me to rebuild my life from the ground up. And for that, in some strange way, I was grateful. The past was behind me, and the future was mine to shape. For the first time in years, I felt truly free.